Each of us speakers this evening has been invited to speak from his own tradition, spirituality, and to address the large topic of peace as a form of resistance in 10 to 12 minutes. And I've just shot the first 30 seconds. I want to begin with a few clarifications. First of all, peace. Peace should never be understood as some type of static condition. Peace is dynamic. There are many moving parts. They are organic, as one of our speakers just said. They're interactive. There can be tension. It should be creative tension, not destructive tension. But if anybody thinks that peace is a sleeper, it is not. Second, justice is really crucial, but extremely difficult and dangerous. Dom Helder Camara, a marvelous bishop, died about 15 years ago in a very poor diocese in Brazil, the Diocese of Recife, made a comment that has been repeated often, and with good reason. When I give bread to the poor, they think I'm a saint. When I ask why the poor do not have bread, they think I'm a communist. The question of justice is inescapable. If you want to have peace, we need to work for justice. In my tradition, Jesus said we should even love our enemies. Even on a good day, I have difficulty loving some of my friends, much less myself. But nonetheless, the challenge is there, and it might even be met if we realize that there's a difference between love and liking. You don't have to like your enemies, but you should love them. And that is, be just toward them. And that's critical, it's difficult, but it's possible. The way of nonviolence, I think, is one of the great lessons that we have before us. And it's spelled out in the Sermon on the Mount in chapter 5 of the Gospel of Matthew. No Christian text has earned the admiration and profound respect of non-Christian communities around the world as has this particular text. A celebrated Zen master of the early 20th century, upon hearing a translation of Matthew's text into Japanese, is said to have spontaneously declared, "The one who said these things is very deeply enlightened." And Mahatma Gandhi credited his first reading of the sermon while he was still studying law in London to inspiring his lifelong commitment to nonviolent political activism. He wrote, "The Sermon on the Mount went straight to my heart. When I first read it, I was simply overjoyed and found my own opinions confirmed where I least expected it." We should not overlook the extraordinary, effective demonstrations of nonviolent resistance that took place this spring in Tunisia and Egypt. I think that the dramatic uprising that brought down the Mubarak dictatorship in Egypt stands as one of the most dramatic examples in history of a peaceful demonstration as a form of resistance. Remember that the people's victory in Egypt was preceded by the downfall of the Ben Ali regime in Tunisia and has inspired movements for freedom and democracy throughout the Middle East. Thousands of people, mostly Muslims, exercised immense personal and communal discipline, even as in the streets they faced real repression. They realized that violence on their part would be contrary to the strategy of effective resistance. What do we need to learn from these courageous people? I think we need to learn to develop competencies. Dr. Hathout, a professor of obstetrics and gynecology, is someone who went through a rigorous training. The concept of jihad is first and most importantly understood as personal discipline. In my tradition, discipline and disciple are linked. Ideals are not enough, however. When you have discipline, when you have competence, you can still do stupid things. You can be a highly, highly skilled athlete and utter stupid things. Competency by itself is not sufficient. You can be even more effective in evil things if you're only competent. So besides competence, there's a second thing that needs to be developed, and I would call that character. Character is what you do when no one is looking. But it's also what grounds what you do in the public light. One can be highly skilled but self-absorbed and immoral. So we need a moral center. I think that the person whose basic attitude is one of reverence is most likely to develop the ability to work for peace over the long haul. When I read the gospel at Mass, I kiss the text. I think such reverence should extend itself to our everyday interactions and all of our words. One Muslim writer put it this way, rather delightfully, but no less profoundly. He writes, "I grew up kissing books and bread. In our house, whenever anyone dropped a book or let fall a chapati or a slice, which was our word for a triangle of buttered leavened bread, the fallen object was required not only to be picked up, but also kissed by way of apology for the act of clumsy disrespect. I was as careless and butterfingered as any child, and accordingly, during my childhood years, I kissed a large number of slices, and also my fair share of books. Devout households in India often contained and still contain persons in the habit of kissing holy books. But we kissed everything. We kissed dictionaries and atlases. We kissed Enid Blyton novels and Superman comics. If I'd ever dropped the telephone directory, I'd probably have kissed that too. All this happened before I had ever kissed a girl. In fact, it would be true enough for a fiction writer anyhow, to say that once I started kissing girls, my activities with regard to bread and books lost some of their special excitement. But one never forgets one's first love. Bread and books, food for the body and food for the soul. What could be more worthy of our respect and even our love? Pope John Paul II spoke a lot about solidarity. He once explained the meaning of the word by reminding people, and I quote him, that it is not a feeling of vague compassion or shallow distress at the misfortune of so many people, both near and far. On the contrary, it is a firm and persevering determination to commit oneself to the common good. That is to say, to the good of all and each individual, because we are all really responsible for all. Unfortunately, commitment to the common good is made difficult in our culture because of three things. First, consumerism, which puts a higher value on having than on being, on doing so at an environmental cost of producing too much and disposing of so much waste. Second, individualism, giving priority to myself at the exclusion of others, is a dominant theme in our culture. And third, a romance with technology, which stresses means, technique, and effectiveness rather than value, the dignity of the person, and the ultimate end of our life on earth. How do we overcome these three obstacles to dedicating ourselves to the common good? One wise person said that there are three ways to look. If you want to be self-absorbed and unhappy, only look within. If you wish to be distracted, look around. But if you want to have peace, look up. I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio. We had lots of snow in the winter. The only way I would make a straight path in the snow was by keeping my eye fixed on a tree or some object before me. The moment I took my eye off the mark set in front of me, I walked crooked. For direction, we need to look above. One way to think of any healthy relationship, any healthy friendship, is that it's not only face to face, it is also shoulder to shoulder. That is, face to face for intimacy, shoulder to shoulder with solidarity for something beyond us. Martin Buber once remarked that any healthy community, if it's going to be healthy, has to have a center that transcends it, that is beyond it. In summary, there is no lasting peace without justice. A nonviolent pursuit of justice demands not only competencies honed through discipline, but character developed through virtue, beginning with reverence. Reverence means holding things sacred, not just bread and books, but the very Creator, our God. May the example of Dr. Hassan Hathout encourage us to be, as he was, a peacemaker through love of God and neighbor. Thank you.